Good morning to you. We are coming to you live on the fourth and final day of the UN World Data Forum in Cape Town, South Africa. Joining us now are Robert Kirkpatrick and Paula Hidalgo-Sanchis. Robert is the director of UN Global Pulse, an initiative of the United Nations driving a big data revolution for global development and resilience. The Global Pulse's network of labs around the globe. They help the UN system to mainstream application of big data for sustainable development and humanitarian action. Paula is manager of Pulse Lab Kampala in Uganda. She has worked as humanitarian and development practitioner in more than 20 countries. Paula is an expert on geographical analysis and is passionate about promoting the use of big data for human development. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paula, I'll start with you. Can you give us your general impression of the forum?
Thank you. I think this is a great opportunity. The organizers and the hosts, the Statistics Office of South Africa, are doing a great job. Bringing a lot of people together from around the world to talk about data and to partner around data. It's a great opportunity for networking, and it's a great opportunity to address together the challenges of the leaving no one behind agenda and making the best use of data.
Robert, speaking about data, why is data so important, how it's connected to the SDGs, and which kinds of big data are more relevant to the SDGs?
So part of the achievement of the SDGs is going to depend on improving measurement, and we have a lot of new indicators in the 2030 agenda that we're going to need to find ways to generate. We think that big data has an incredibly important role to play in generating some of these new indicators, these so-called Tier 3 indicators. That are posing a lot of challenge for national statistics offices around the world. At the same time, there's a more important role of data, and particularly big data, in the achievement of the SDGs, and that's really in transforming how we make decisions as institutions, as organizations, as our society. People are, as they go about their daily lives, as they buy and sell goods, as they move through cities and search for information on the internet, they're producing this vast digital ocean of data. And it turns out that that information can be used to understand in real time when they're losing their jobs, when they're getting sick, when they're struggling to afford basic necessities. So that kind of information is going to be really, really critical in complementing traditional statistical approaches of tracking progress, with also looking at in real time what's happening around the world to vulnerable populations and beginning to use some of this new mathematics and technology to peer into the future and spot emerging risks. So this is really about sort of complementing measurement with more agile, adaptive, learning-driven approaches to programming and policy making. I think that as we look at sort of the many different kinds of big data that are out there today, one of those that has us very excited is information on the movement of populations. So every time you make a phone call or receive a call or send or receive a text message through even a basic phone, not even a smartphone, the location of the tower through which that event occurred is recorded somewhere in the mobile operator's database. And when you anonymize that information and aggregate it, what you can do is essentially see in real time how millions and millions of people move through cities. This turns out to be incredibly important for understanding, for example, migration after a drought, or how people are displaced by an earthquake, seeing how far people have to come from to get to water, or health clinics, or schools, or markets. So every mobile operator in the world, without realizing it, is producing a real-time monitoring system on population movement. A second aspect of this that we think is really exciting, for example, is social media. We're on Facebook today. And you know, as people are sharing all of this information on social media, it turns out there's a lot of information there that's absolutely vital for sustainable development progress. We, for example, have a partnership with Twitter that gives us access to the entire Twitter fire hose, about 500 million messages a day. And when we filter that information and take out the sports scores and the celebrity chatter, what you find is people reporting the prices of food in the market and talking about why they don't intend to vaccinate their children, for example. So lots of important signals in there in this very public forum. The final area where we're really excited is really trying to reach across the digital divide into more disconnected and vulnerable communities who aren't always on the internet, can't afford smartphones. What we've been doing in Uganda is essentially taking artificial intelligence software and using it to learn to recognize Ugandan speech in Luganda, Acholi, and Ugandan English. So these are indigenous languages in the country, and we're building speech recognition. Dictation software is a roughly 30-year-old technology, but now we can use it to learn to recognize a conversation in languages where there isn't yet a market from a business perspective. And this in turn allows us then to turn that public conversation into text that we can analyze, just as we would Twitter or Facebook. So this is an area where we think there's incredible potential, because we're suddenly able to create real-time digital information out of thin air and use that to understand what's happening to vulnerable populations. It's public conversation, but it's never been turned into big data before, and that's incredibly exciting.
I think you touched on the real-time data. So moving to Paula, how can countries with limited resources improve their use of data for sustainable development?
Thank you. I think we have now as many opportunities as challenges we have. We need to give a lot of answers with data, but we have more opportunities than ever to tap into new data. More data has been generated in the last 2 years than in all human history. That data, big data and digital data, is generated when people go on with their daily lives. When people say something or do something attached or linked to a digital device. That is generated a digital footprint. We can now understand, analyze, and use those digital footprints to give answers to the SDGs, not only to monitor, but also to achieve the SDGs. The technologies and the methodologies to do so have been developed for a long time by private sector and academia. Private sector has been using this type of data to do business. We have now the opportunity to use it for the SDGs. As I was saying, not only to monitor them, but also to achieve them, to better understand context, to better understand changes, to better design programs, and to better adapt our programs, also to better evaluate the programs that we are doing. So we have all these opportunities right now. Now, how do we do this? Two things I would like to highlight. First of all, we need to change the way we look at data. Normally, when we think about the statistics, we think about producing data. We produce data to understand, to measure reality. What we need to do now is to change our mindset and to find the data that has already been produced to understand and to measure reality, to generate the statistics. We know that data, this new data, digital data, big data, will never be represented in universes of analysis the same way that other data is doing. We know that it has a lot of biases, but still it has a lot of opportunities, a lot of potential, and we need to tap into it. For that, we need this change of mindset, and we also need partnerships. Partnership is key. The good thing of this forum, of this conference, is that all these partners have come together. There's a huge amount of interest in the sessions, and there's discussions about working together. Most of the data from the big data, digital data, is produced and owned by private sector. We need to work with private sector. Methodologies have been developed with academia. We need to work with academia. We need to work with the people. Civil society needs to come on board. Governments, development practitioners, they need to come together with academia and private sector to tap into this type of data.
Robert, Paula mentioned that you're producing more data than ever in human history. How do you protect privacy when working with big data?
Big data poses unique risks from a privacy standpoint, because you can't simply take out the explicit personally identifiable information such as name or phone number or address and expect that the risk of re-identifying somebody in this data is simply gone away. What you search for on the internet, where you go on the weekends or on a holiday, what you buy and sell turns out over time, when you have enough data, to be as unique to you as your fingerprint. And so I think there's a problem in general that the average person today isn't even aware of the kinds of data that they're producing, of how those data are being used commercially, and how they can be reused in ways that could, for example, discriminate against them. So I think there's a failure we have in today's privacy regulations to protect people from the harms that big data poses, and an urgent need to educate the public more effectively on the risk that the data poses from a privacy standpoint. That said, I think that the harms that can result from a privacy breach, and they do occasionally come, are in some ways outshadowed by the harms that we're going to be failing to protect people from every day all around the world if we can't figure out how to unlock the social value of this data. In other words, we're not, by not innovating enough and making this data accessible enough for use for the Sustainable Development Goals, we're placing people in harm's way in terms of hunger, poverty, and disease. So my sense is we have to move away from regulations that focus exclusively on privacy and look more comprehensively at risk management, right? How do we manage both the risks of misuse and the risks of misuse, of non-use of this data for good? And this means we're going to need new policy frameworks, we're going to need private sector to find ways to anonymize the data and share it. And we need the public to begin to ask not only that their privacy be protected, but that this data be used to improve service delivery, accountability, early warning, and crisis response.
Thank you very much to Robert Kirkpatrick and Paula Hidalgo-Sanchis from Global Pulse for joining us. Please send us your questions and we'll try to get answers for you. To learn more about the forum, visit the website www.undataforum.org.